I never really got to enjoy 80s Whitey ball. Too young. You didn't get to enjoy it.
No.
You didn't get to enjoy it.
No.
But my daddy always told me about it.
There it is.
Listen to it with Jack Buck and all that stuff, man.
Yep.
That's what it is. That's the memories I got. My dad telling me about Whitey Ball and all that when I was a kid. So that was a tough one yesterday. 92. God, good for you though, man. Like I look at that like 92. He's got 16 grandkids. He's got such a huge family. He lived a long time. They got to see a lot with him. Just to see how people react to him in public. They must be I know they're sad right now, but boy, oh boy, what a cool granddaddy to have, or a great granddaddy for that matter too. So anyway, I just wanted to bring him up right off the bat. Brendan, have you met him? Do you have any stories about him?
I didn't. I met him, but just in passing, mostly down at the ballpark. And he would be down there still, in recent years when I've been there. And you'd see him sitting in the lobby or whatever. And the folks that he knew well, some of the guys that you mentioned, they'd be yucking it up from time to time. There was one kind of comedic moment where, like, again, in that lobby down there at Busch Stadium where the media goes in, that's also like the VIP entrance.
Yeah.
And so there'd be times that Whitey would be sitting down there on a couch or whatever before a game. And there was one time where it was Star Wars night at Busch, and so I go in the elevator to go up, and Whitey's down there, and a moment later, in walks like 3 stormtroopers and a Darth Vader and a Wookiee.
Yeah.
These dudes are in full costume for Star Wars night, all walking, like just getting on the elevator next to Whitey. And I don't know, I just saw the look on his face, and I was like, this is one of those things that nobody would believe if you told them. Like, it's just a ridiculous moment there.
I would like to see what he said in his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, he said something clever, witty, funny, probably chirped the hell out of him.
That was another thing that people loved about him too, right? Is the way he related to people. And like when he was a manager, he had this reputation as a player's manager because he kind of let his guys do what they felt comfortable doing and be themselves. And you could joke around and you could do things, but then when it was time to get the job done, that was another thing, and it was just so good about that. I think players really appreciated that about him.
I read, I watch Frankie on 5 on Your Side. I always see what he has to say. You know what I mean? And he really was heartfelt about it. Going to his house in I think it was in South County there, or maybe in anyway. It doesn't matter where he lived. But Frankie was telling him, just sitting there and talking baseball. He's like, I walk out of there, I just felt so much smarter about the damn game. Like he just takes it to another level, man. Just to pick his brain. Somebody else wrote. I read the articles today. Hockey maybe was talking about one of the young players in the 80s was so nervous about a game. He was so nervous, and then Whitey came up to him and goes, "Hey, let me tell you a little story. I'm on this canoe fishing with Red, and he's just telling the story. And we're sitting there drinking a beer, we're fishing, having a good time, and all of a sudden, we got all our important stuff, our fishing gears on that thing, and all of a sudden, Red probably had a little too many. He stood up and tipped us all over. We got all our fishing gear. Just told this story about just kind of an embarrassing moment, or he had to crawl out of a jam. He lost all his stuff. And it had nothing to do with baseball, had nothing to do with anything, but what it had to do with is getting kind of baseball off your mind and kind of laughing right before he walked down the mound or whatever it was. And I'm like, does that work? And I'm thinking like, yeah, my brain used to race so much. And if somebody just said something funny or something different, just to get away from that for a second, clear your mind, regroup, and go on the mound, go on the ice, or whatever it was. Little things like that go a long way. That was all strategic on his part, man. That wasn't just like, oh, let me just tell you about something. No, he did that on purpose, and that day or that game, it did work. So little things like that, man. And I was telling you earlier, I think he's that old school cat to where, like, if he was a hockey coach or whatever, and if I played for him, I think he would appreciate me and my style, and I think I would totally appreciate him. Where I could look at him in his eyes and I just know where I'm at. I know where I'm at. There's some coaches, man, you look at him, you're like, dude, I don't know where I sit with you, man. You don't say hi to me when I walk by. You don't do this. You're not you don't give me just a tap on the ass or whatever it is. I need those little things as an athlete. And all the stories I heard about Whitey, man, he did that to perfection. And that's little things like that are why he's so damn successful and loved. Beer drinking, Midwestern, let's go, tougher than nails. That's why, baby.
He's an everyman. Was an everyman. And you mentioned, the ability to relate to people, to relate to players. And then you mentioned as well, like, well, how does somebody like me, how does somebody like the younger generation how did they experience Whitey? Well, it's through the stories from Grandpa and Dad and all those generations that was they lived it, and that was like the formative years of a Cardinals experience for a lot of different people. And now that's why, I mean, Whitey is a huge reason that Cardinals fandom is as passionate and as big of a deal as it is to a lot of people, because when he was making things happen in the 80s, he built that roster, man. He made trades. He was in charge of all that, and he reshaped it the way that he wanted it to be, and that ended up leading to a lot of success there in the 80s. So it's just interesting to think about, and gosh, like, man, I wish I could have been there, wish I could have seen, but I feel like I was in a way because of the way that legacy gets passed down by people still talking about the man.
It does. The legacy gets passed down so much in this town, man. Everybody remembers everything. He reminds me of Bobby Plager in a way.
I think that's a fair comparison.
Is that fair?
In a way.
So.
It's just his presence after the game. Bobby had every single job in the whole Blues organization. Every single one.
Kind of like Caruso.
Well, Caruso didn't coach. He won a GM. He won this. He won that. Bobby was everything, including a player. Caruso didn't play.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
I was waiting for you to say that.
He didn't play.
I think we're missing one job.
Yeah, just like Caruso. Besides that. But I do think he is like a Bobby player who's just loved. He was loved, and he stayed around, and his face was everywhere. You'd see him at a bar. Bobby drank beer until he didn't drink beer. Just like a good old Midwestern kind of guy that did a lot for these organizations, that stuck around, that hung out with fans, that talked to you like you were a real person. Mm-hmm. He looked in my eye. Caruso, speaking of him, 2 years ago, Kate and I are down at the game. I'm cruising around saying, hey, what's up, everybody? What's up? And Caruso goes, come here. I go, he texts me. He goes, meet me here. I go, okay. He goes, I want to introduce you to somebody. I'm like, all right, what's up? So I go all the way down. I mean, he goes, come here. And I'm talking. So he goes, get over here. And I'm like, geez, okay. And I go down, and Whitey's sitting right there, dude. Yeah. I believe with his wife, somebody, and he turns around. I think he was in a wheelchair at the time. Turns around, looks at me, and goes, hey, Cam, how are you? Looks at me in my eyes, says my name, and shakes my hand like a man. And I'm like, God dang. I'm like, wow. Said my name, looked at me in my eyes. Wasn't like, hey, how you doing? No, like little things, dude. He looked at me like he knew me for 18 years.
That's
that
cool, man.
Kind of stuff.
That is very cool.
And Bobby would do the same damn thing. So that's how I compare him.
Can I play something real quick?
Hell yeah!
All right, so this is on the Mets broadcast last night. Keith Hernandez is part of the Mets broadcast, obviously played with the Cardinals, and they had some glowing words to share about Whitey Herzog, just telling some stories about him, too.
Well, Hall of Famer, and deservedly so. When he came over and joined the first full season in 1981, it was the split season that year. From day one in spring training, we knew who was in charge, and he really taught us, insisted on fundamentals and the little things that win ball games, defense, base running, everything. And
Marte unloads one to center field. Taylor will have room, though. One out.
So it basically taught us how to win. There was a bunch of young players there that needed some direction, and he provided it. He was the manager you were never going to beat on the field. I think Ronnie would agree with that. Ooh. And he was the architect for those 80 Mets, which I was a part of. His only World's Championship was 82. I was a part of that team. But he basically put that club together around AstroTurf, the big old Busch Stadium, speed, defense, pitching.
Damn right. Right there.
Keith
They had a
Hernandez.
bunch of home run hitters, right? And then, like, the ballpark was real big, so they're like, no, we got to change our game up a little bit.
He made a ton of moves.
Yeah.
I think it was the Winter Meetings 1980. He was the GM, or in charge of the moves anyway. And he made like a bunch of trades. He got Raleigh Fingers and then traded him away like a day later or whatever it was. Like he reshaped the roster that he wanted. And I would wonder. I'd like to wonder like what that would have been like in the Twitter era if Mozeliak were making the. I mean, Cam, it was crazy. And again, I've only read about it.
Yeah.
But I imagine what the reaction was at the time, because I bet there were some people going, "Oh, come on, you're going to trade that guy away?
Yes.
Oh, come on, you're going to pick up this all-star pitcher and you're going to trade him away a day later. What are they doing?" I would have been very compelled to see how the reactions were back then. And if you're somebody who remembers it, feel free to text in. But I just think that's kind of cool. But like he built the team in the way that he thought it needed to be, in the way that baseball needed to be played. I thought it was funny.
And he was right.
He was right in the way that, like, he was willing to do that in that era and find a way to gain an edge. But to him, it was just playing baseball the right way. I saw this quote. Katie Wu tweeted out her article, but this quote from Whitey that was in it, where he said, quote, "What's Whitey Ball? I don't even know what it is. Whitey Ball, Billy Ball. What's the difference? It's all just baseball." Like, that's funny to me that he's like, well, don't name the style after, that's just baseball.
Yeah.
That's just what baseball is and should be.
I get that, man. I do. Yeah, I was going to say, like, so for him and Mike Shannon, when Mike Shannon passed, like, who do you think's more, and this might be kind of a goofy, but I'm thinking, like, somebody just chimed in and goes, when Mike Shannon died, he wasn't talked about as much by the media.
Yeah, I saw that question on the text line. I don't know if I even agree with that. I think Mike Shannon was
huge.
Was widely celebrated and discussed. And I mean, the difference there is, like, okay, Mike Shannon, for someone my age, like, I maybe didn't experience all the Mike Shannon years, right? There are a lot of them, but I have all those memories because he was on the broadcasts throughout my life. And so I think because a guy that's on the radio is more prominent, you have a chance every single day throughout the summer to not interact with him, but you feel like you do, right? And so that's where it's just a little bit of a different thing, whereas Whitey was managing and then he no longer was. Now, he was still involved. He still followed the game. He still was down at Busch all the time.
He's around. You saw him at
regular down there.
Saw him drinking Busch beer.
But it was just, it's just that would be the difference that I could pinpoint. It's like, well, Mike Shannon, I'm 29 years old. I heard Mike Shannon all throughout my childhood, whereas I heard the stories from others about Whitey, but I didn't necessarily see Whitey all the time relative to the experience there. But no, I think to Klaus's point, I think Mike Shannon was celebrated and revered, and Whitey the same, and I think deservedly so in both cases.
So you brought up the Twitter back in the 80s, right?
That'd be so funny. Oh, I could only imagine.
I want to look up some of the articles that maybe I don't know who was around at the time.
Well,
right?
I'm sure Rick
was it Ricky? Was
mean,
Ricky in the 80s too? Yeah, I guess you're right.
I think Jeff Jones, shared this, was that one of the favorite stories that Rick would tell was that at that 1980 GM meetings, Hummel, I guess, showed up to the hotel or wherever it was being held after the teams had already gotten there, and when he saw Whitey in the lobby or whatever, Whitey said, "Where you been, Hum? I've got some deals to make. I've got some trades to make." And that was the famous winter meetings where he just made a bunch of deals to reshape the team.
He's like, "I got to go all in, dude."
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, when he did start making some of those changes and started kind of forcing the Whitey Ball era a little bit. I'm just curious on what those articles said. Like, were they like, "Wow, this is different. This should be good," or was it like, "I don't know what's going on here." I'm just curious. I would read all those old school articles from Hummel and whoever was in part, and just to see what their kind of mindset was at the time, because that was that was a big deal, man. You're completely changing the game. You're completely changing your roster. You're completely changing the way you play the game. And if any coach did that now, it would just, the negativity on Twitter and whatnot and social media would be through the roof until you start winning, and then they'd forget about it and they start talking positive about you. So, I don't know. Those old school articles, man, I just like to see where everybody was at the time. So, what do you think, Cole? What do you think?
Hey,
Poor
Cole's here.
Cole's from Columbus. Like, he lives up in Ohio, didn't really get to know. He's been here for 2 years, and now he's got to break down Whitey Herzog.
Well, I will say I think that we were in somewhat of a jam, so I think that I don't want to say we deserve sympathy, but I have a slight amount of sympathy for us.
Careful now.
Yeah, I know.
I'll just say,
if you didn't hear what happened yesterday,
I didn't.
We had some delicate news, and we didn't know whether or not we could talk about it yet. And so we're like, and so Cam's like 50% there. He's like, "Look, man,
I was half in.
Something bad happened, and then he kind of like,
oh no,
then he kind of like pulled back the reins, and he's like, we don't know if we can talk about it yet, though, and so it was a real 50-50 because we didn't have the sources. Frank's the one who had the information, and also we kind of want to let him report it himself because he had the,
that was
the
another
information.
Thing. He deserves it.
You guys knew in maybe like a behind-the-scenes way where it was not, you weren't sure what was public
It's
yet.
like we just heard somebody out in the hallway talking about Whitey Herzog passing away, and we're live on the radio. We're like, are we supposed to talk about this? Sounds like huge news.
That's tough.
And so we're all on the internet, like, all it takes is like his Wikipedia page to say that he died for us to be
Or
like,
on
okay,
Twitter, somebody saying, "Hey guys,"
or literally one person
Not
on Twitter, and no one had anything. Wikipedia didn't have it. Twitter didn't have it.
Yeah.
Literally, it felt like the only person who knew was Frank. And so we're like, we hear them talking in the hallways about Whitey Herzog passing away, and we're like, this is pretty significant news, like that we shouldn't just not talk about on the radio. But at the same time, it's like we don't know who knows and who doesn't know.
And I think it's fair just to have Frank come in and just talk about it. Like he deserves that. The guy's worked his ass off for so long, and he knows the guy personally. Apparently, Joe Davis was not happy with us. Apparently, really? Joe Davis, Klaus said, because Klaus listens to every show.
Yeah,
all day,
that
590.
That means Joe said it on Tuna's show.
Yeah, Joe was so mad at you guys that you didn't talk about it. And he was saying on the Tuna show, I'm never scooping the morning show again.
Oh,
damn, man, that sucks.
Joe, what's going on?
Joe gave us the information and we didn't talk about
trust him.
And he's like,
we didn't trust him.
Oh.
We didn't trust him.
So he knew the information and he told you guys that you could talk about it?
Yeah, he came in here and opened the door and told us. So I didn't play that great.
Got to mend some fences there, maybe. Here's what I will, in your guys' defense. When you're live on the air and you get something unexpected, whether it's good news, bad news, whatever, sometimes it's just be tricky to figure out exactly how to react, and especially in that case, because like you walked us through with Frank and everything. Not ideal probably, but also understandable how it could come to be that way.
It's all good. What do we got there, Cole? Who do we got?
We got Matt.
Matty, what up, baby? What's going on?
Hey, this is Carpenter Matt, not Matt Carpenter.
Oh, nice.
Gotcha.
What's up, man?
Anyway, I got a great story about Whitey.
Hell yeah.
He was good friends till he died with Danny Cox. You guys remember him at all?
Oh, God, yeah. I did some charity events with him.
Danny Cox, we used to get, that was before bleacher seats were reserved, and we go down there early, pay like $6 for a bleacher seat. And when Danny was pitching, we all were yelling all the time, Cox on the mound, Cox on the mound. Anyway, fast forward, I don't know if it was he had a start coming up or what was going on, but something happened. I think he lived in Atlanta, and his sister's husband was roughing her up, and he asked Whitey, hey, I need a day. None of the fans knew what was going on. Like, where's Danny Cox? Well, he went down there and beat the hell out of that guy and then came back. That was in the middle of the season.
Really? So his sister was getting roughed up by her husband, and he went to Whitey and said, listen, I need to go take care of some business. I'll be back.
Correct.
And Whitey kind of hushed everybody up about it and then let him go and didn't tell any. That's pretty damn cool. Now, you can't do that anymore.
I mean, nobody but Whitey would have ever, because Whitey was as real can be. I mean, I was 20 years old when he came, and it blew my mind that we got him for one thing, and that's the kind of stuff Gussie Busch would do for the Cardinals. He would get someone like him, not the current, administration. So Whitey was in charge, and you know what? He was there for 10 years, and he's like, all right, I'm done. And that's how it should be with guys like John Mozeliak. He should be gone, too.
Do you think... You don't think Ollie's going to be if Lance Lynn's like, imagine Lance Lynn's like, hey, listen, I gotta go out to California and I gotta rough up some cats and then I'm gonna miss a start. Is that cool, Ollie? I'm sure Ollie would say no on that.
No, I don't see that, and I don't see Ollie lasting long. I believe he takes all his orders. I don't think he makes one decision on his own. I think everything comes from upstairs.
Then why, in that case, would he not be long for the job if they're making all the decisions?
Well, that would be if Mozeliak would leave, he'd be gone too.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you got to imagine that they're probably going to promote from within for the GM role or the Pobo role whenever Mo steps down.
Maybe.
In a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's going to be just like last year. They'll play 500 ball the whole year and be happy with it, as long as they get their fans.
Well, are they going to get their fans? That's the question.
I don't know. It's not looking good right now.
They were not playing 500 ball last year, just to correct it.
Well, and Frankie said that the whole 3 million fans a year started with Whitey.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Whitey just brought. I just wish baseball was like that. I know it's cliche talking about him like this, but they earned every run they had. They were never swinging for the fences.
Yeah, I get you, man. Well, I appreciate that. That's an interesting story. Really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. All right, man. I'm going to ask Coxie that if I see him again.
Yeah, this is
on the mound.
Yeah, baby. Cox on the mound. I like it. All right, homeboy.
Appreciate
Hey, good talking, dude.
Carpenter Matt.
See you, Carpenter Matt.
Here's L.A. Times on that story. Guys, right-hander Danny Cox of the St. Louis Cardinals. This was October 1985. Took time out from a pennant race to travel to Georgia and punch his brother-in-law, or his former brother-in-law, in the mouth. Here's a quote from Cox. Quote, I started it, I finished it. It only took 2 punches.
Wow.
That's in the LA Times.
That is 80s through and through there, baby.
Nice.
Isn't that nice?
I like the article, too. He says, I think anybody in that situation would have done the same thing, said Cox, a 6'4", 230-pounder. I like how they put his, the tail of the tape in there, just because we know there's
He looks like a big farm boy, too. He's cool as hell.